So I wanted to talk today about, is the UFC dying? And I decided to be a full podcaster today, full Brendan Schaub, full Cam Newton. And, you know, I wanted to have a heart-to-heart with you, my fans, the people that have been supporting me along the way. And if you haven't checked out Cam Newton's podcast, I suggest you should, because he smokes cigars. So just wanted to have an honest conversation about why the UFC could and will be dying. And the inspo off this video is basically because my boy Pat CC, I would highly recommend going and checking him out on YouTube. His videos pull in millions upon millions. They pull in millions and millions of views per week because he posts every Monday. He pulls in millions and millions of views. There we go. He pulls in millions and millions of views. And he doesn't really talk about the UFC that much. He talks more about what happens in the pop culture world, in the rap world, in the acting world, the comedy world, in the WWE world. He made many videos on WWE, but the first time he ever truly talked about the UFC was to discuss Conor McGregor's downfall. And again, good video. I'm not hating on him whatsoever. He makes really great content. But this past Monday, he posted a video about the UFC and why it sucks now, and about how Dana is truly invested in the power slap, and how he doesn't really care about the actual product itself that the UFC works on right now. None of that. So the fact that this is happening, that a casual fan is talking about how the UFC sucks right now, is really mind-boggling, because I don't know this guy. I just know of his work. I tune in every Monday to watch his videos. So I don't know if he sits down on a Saturday night to watch a UFC fight, but you guys get the idea. So it bears a question. Is the UFC dying? And it looks like it's going to rain here in my home city. So I'm just going to hold my camera like this for a little bit. It bears a question, is the UFC dying? And in my honest opinion, I wouldn't say it's dying. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this video. I wouldn't say it's dying. The only thing I would say is that it does not hit the way it used to. And people want to say, oh, well, you're a casual if you think the UFC isn't cool anymore, blah, 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 blah. Let me just tell y'all something now. I've been watching the UFC for 18 years. The first ever UFC pay-per-view I purchased was UFC 78, Rashad Evans versus Michael Bisping. People are gonna be like, who the hell are those guys? Look them up. UFC Hall of Famers. My first ever UFC I watched was UFC 64, Anderson Silva, Rich Franklin. I remember that, and that just shows how long I've known the game. So this ain't me being a casual. This is me being honest, because I'm gonna shoot straight with everybody, no matter what it is, even though it's the UFC, the diehard sport that I've been watching, loving since I was 6 years old. And excuse my dog for barking all kinds. I had to lock him up for this video. So what I mean by it doesn't hit the same anymore, it just doesn't hit the same anymore. I can't remember the last time that I was truly excited for a UFC fight. I mean, maybe John Jones and Stipe, maybe Ilya and Charles, maybe Ilya and Volkanovski, based off of recent memory. That's probably the only time I can remember being remotely excited for a fight. The rest are just meh. People complain about the cards being fight night cards, being cards that, why are we paying for these cards when they should be a free pay-per-view? Oh, and by the way, we haven't had a free pay-per-view since UFC 267 almost 4 years ago. It makes no sense. Now, the argument that bears now is there's no stars. There's no Conor McGregors. There's no Ronda Rouseys. There's no Brock Lesnar's. And you could make the argument on the other hand to say, well, Ilya's a superstar. I guarantee you, the Charles fight that he just had, that pay-per-view did not do over 500K. hardcore fans watched it and some casual fans watched it, but he will never pull a McGregor type number. Just never, never will. Brock Lesnar, a guy like him, ain't coming back. We tried the CM Punk experiments 2 years after Brock left, the same year Brock left. Didn't work out. Women's MMA is officially dying. The super fight, quote unquote super fight that happened, that's going to be probably both Amanda's and Kayla's last fight in the octagon, because Kayla keeps making herself dead trying to cut all that weight to 135. Plain and simple. And so if you're a returning subscriber, thank you. And if you aren't, please sure to smash that subscribe button. And you would know I would have graphics and facts and, you know, quotes from people up on the screen by now, but I truly wanted to have a heart-to-heart with you guys. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. With there being no stars in the UFC now, think about it. There's just not. I'm not hating. That's a fact. Name the last pay-per-view to do over 1 million buys. UFC 300, okay, because they stacked that to the bitch. Stacked that to the bitch. That card was more stacked than a corn star, okay? That's a fact. But think about before UFC 300. The last pay-per-view to do over 1 million buys, UFC 264. The one before that, UFC 257. Both of those had the biggest star in UFC history in Conor McGregor. What was the one before that? UFC 251, when we were the smack dab the middle of the pandemic and everybody needed something to watch, and the UFC, to their credit, was the first sports promotion, major sports promotion, to come back during the pandemic. What was the one before that? Conor and Khabib, the biggest fight in UFC history. That's 5 pay-per-views before UFC 300. 229, 251, 264, 257. Excuse me, that's 4. 4 pay-per-views where one guy carried the entire promotion. 3 of them, to be exact. There's no stars, and there probably never will be a big star like Conor in the promotion ever again. There will be guys that will probably get 700,000 pay-per-view buys, 500,000 pay-per-view buys, but there ain't gonna be another Conor. That's just a fact. And I think with that precedent, that's why Dana is going off and promoting boxing, going off and promoting power slap. He's not as invested like there was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, where Conor was on the come up and he was the biggest star in the sport. Now, to his credit, he did say, who knows who can be a superstar at any given day. That's just a fact. I just want to end on one more thing. Yes, there was boring champions in the year 2024. I don't care what anybody says. Merab is starting to grow on a lot of people, but many people would still consider him boring. I think him finishing Sean O'Malley definitely helped his case. But Bilal Muhammad was boring. He's corny. Everybody is cosplaying Conor McGregor, or Colby Covington for that matter, or a Diaz bro for that matter. Everyone's trying to be them rather than being their authentic selves, because the press conferences are so diluted as well. Nobody cares about a press conference on a Thursday the way they did in 2021 or 2020 or 2015 or 2016. Nobody cares about press conferences because they're so dry. There's no more journalists in the space. It's all influencers asking what they like to do before the fight, or if they beat their meat before the fight. You get the idea. There was boring champions. Ilya's probably the most exciting. I wouldn't say, again, I made a whole video about Alex. Alex is a star, he's not a superstar. And that's nothing against him, but if he lets his fighting do the talking, which is great, by the way, but he just doesn't have what Ilya has. He doesn't have the cold quotes like Ilya or Conor or John Jones for that matter. So he'll never be a superstar in my book. He'll be a star, but the only reason why his pay-per-view at UFC 300 did over 1 million pay-per-view buys was because it was 300. Guarantee you, none of his other pay-per-views will crack over 500K. So yes, there is no stars. There's no champions that are exciting per se other than Ilya. There is no aura around these events anymore. It's just that plain and simple. So yes, I go back to my point. The UFC is not dying, but it definitely doesn't hit like it used to. They need something. They need Conor to return, or they need somebody to come along and be basically another version. I know Ilya is probably the closest with the tattoos and the cold quotes and whatnot. I get that, but it's just still not enough. And I don't know if they could ever recover from something like this. And I would say that the UFC stopped being this way in 2023. 2022, I would say, was probably the every year is going to be a good year for the UFC. They're always going to print money. But I would say the last good year where they had some aura around their cards was 2022. Let me know in the comment section. If you want more videos like this, please let me know. It's your boy Hollywood AJ. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you all for supporting me throughout the years. I love each and every one of you.